A void into the industry.
Welcome to the 7th Annual Collection Community Collaboratory. 7 years ago, Mark and I were in Chicago, I believe, and we were trying to figure out what we should call our industry, and we ended up calling it the connection industry, connection community. And it's because that's really all we do, is we connect stuff. We connect sensors together, connect people. And this year, I'm asking the sages of the industry that we have up here to share with us their thoughts. We usually just basically what the trends are for the year and anything they would like to share with the room, and then we hope to open it up to discussion. I think I'm going to let Mark start with his first session. What I've done is I've allowing them all to come up and do a 5-minute presentation to kick off the session. And then we're going to enter into a discussion, and probably will be first a discussion between each of them as they brought up issues that the others want to talk about. I'm also going to let them do their own introduction, and the reason for that is all of them wear several different hats, and they may. I'm kind of interested to see who they think they are. So, Mark, do you want to start by? And I would like you to come up to the podium here to start with, but feel free after we do that and we just get into the discussion. We'll either use these ones, or if you wish to interact, you can go out there, or we want the audience. Oh, it's another thing I should mention. So if you would like to ask a question, if you could please come to the mic in the aisle. The reason for that is that we have the video that's being recorded and the sound connected to that, and we can't hear at all for people from the sides. At the last session, we had people along the walls, and they were asking great questions, but we couldn't make it part of what we were doing. And so we have people answering questions that were never asked, so it kind of looks a little, okay. Mark?
All right. Thank you, Ken. Delighted to be here. My name is Mark Peacock. My day job is I'm the Chief Marketing Communication Officer for Linkspring. My other jobs are Executive Secretary on the Project Haystack organization and moving Project Haystack along in the industry. I also serve as an advisor to the Realcomm organization, on the board of directors of Connects Energy, and if I ever have any time, I'm a good, devoted husband and a grandfather. So I prepared a couple statements that I'm going to go ahead and start us off with, and I hope the rest of my esteemed colleagues can either jump in on or say something completely different. So I'm going to start off like this, and I'm going to go ahead and sort of refer to my notes. So technology in our built environment is growing faster than we've ever seen it before. These are amazing times that are having a profound effect on different perspectives on how we manage and operate our buildings. However, there's one common denominator among all the different technologies we put in our buildings. They all create data. Access to this data, its use, how it's analyzed, how we bridge the data to the human side, which is a topic that Ken wants us to touch on, will determine the next decade of how human we really get and interact with our buildings. The dialogue today is no longer about the potential, but rather it's the reality of economics through driving operational value, business outcomes, and the human experience. The business of smart commercial buildings and technologies is moving far beyond what we call the unknown and is now in a new era of empowerment. So 2018, I think, was truly an extremely transformative year for us who are in this industry, not only in terms of the technology that we've seen, but also it marked a true fundamental shift in the conversation. And what I mean by that is the conversation is now being driven by digital transformation, data, dialogue, and disruption, and the mindset of the OEM suppliers, the integrators, as well as the building owners and operators. So, what's in store for this year? What are the issues that I think are trending up, that are bubbling up beneath the surface that will come into play? Good question. What are the new developments and surprises that will likely take our industry by storm this year? One of those is definitely the human experience. And I want to close this out with what I think is an interesting statement for our industry this year, which is, while there are many things for sure, 2019 will be the year of truth for the built environment. And with that, I'll let you ponder that thought for a moment. Good luck, pal. They'll set you up. Okay.
I've been waiting longer in 2019 to see it. Oh, that's wonderful. The previous session I really enjoyed as well. I mean, they had one about open hardware, open software, and I love listening to the young guys. Everything is possible, completely possible, and I just love their naivety in this, all this. So what do the old guys think about? The old guys think about who's going to eat your lunch, is what it is. And when, as Mark says about disruption, yes, there are some disruptive forces out there. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. We are proponents of Raspberry Pi, and the reason being is that in my long career, I was a guy who said the IBM PC would not have an impact on the industrial industry. So with that big mistake, I'm not going to make that mistake again. So when something comes up like Raspberry Pi, I'm a believer. Not the one that I'm a hacker or anything like that. I just see young people came up to us in the stands. Two very young ladies came up, and I noticed they were mechanical engineers, probably recent grads. And they say, oh, is that neat? There's a Raspberry Pi in there. It's just so cool. So that's it. So I knew this is going to happen. So we promote it because it is a disruptor. It's a disruptor to open controls, proprietary controls, and so on. So I would mention a little bit about that because that is a community. It's a bigger community than we have, and we should address it. The other hat we wear, I'm president of Contemporary Controls, and I'm involved in one of the BACnet committees as well. And we all know each other. So, and one hobby we have is to promote Sedona as an open software, and that's what we're involved in that. And I'm involved in the Sedona Alliance. The other thing I would suggest is we look at this IoT. This is a big disruptor as well. And I did a little studying on this, and the industry today in just cloud computing is $513 billion. And we think we have a great show here. And it's a great show, and it's nice and big, but this is, cloud computing alone is $513 billion. Both AWS and Microsoft, they each are doing about $20 billion already in this business. So if we think we're going to have some kind of influence on them, and we're kidding ourselves. The other thing, too, is that I would call it the cloud wars. Those guys are going at each other, and they're throwing everything at it. IBM mentioned they're going to spend $5 billion in 5 years. Microsoft mentioned that. Google has got 90,000 software engineers, and plus contractors. They can throw anything at anything. You know, they have it. They have the resources. So I see this as a possible disruptor. The other disruptor that I see is that we talk about buildings that are under BAS control. There are a bunch of buildings that are not under a BAS control. And what if those buildings go directly to these cloud providers and ignore us as an industry? I say that's a legitimate risk. For example, I'm changing my generator that failed after about 20 years. I'm putting a new one in, and the new one in has its own cloud connection. So it just goes beyond anybody. The contractor says, I just have to get your Wi-Fi credentials, and he's up and running. So I would say, yes, the industry is opportunity, but a lot of risk, and we should look out for that. So with that, I will continue with the other brain trust over here. Okay.
Hi, my name is Troy Davis. I'm Director of Sales for EnOcean, wireless sensor and controls company. I'm also a technical advisor on wireless troubleshooting on large projects and different things like that. So I'd like to start off by saying anything is possible. We can do pretty much anything. No. So I think within buildings we can, there's pretty much everything we can measure. We can measure the light level in this room. I can tell you what the temperature is, the humidity. I can tell you the CO2 levels. We can tell you all of these things. And that starts into the IoT part of this, which is these are all things, and they're part of a building and part of building automation and part of these different things, but they're typically segregated into various silos. So the lighting group is not going to talk to the HVAC group, and the HVAC group is not going to talk to the cleaning staff, and the cleaning staff is not going to talk to the supply industry who supplies parts to some of these different places. And as we get into these buildings, you can measure these things all you want, but when you introduce people to this environment, it gets really interesting. If we had all these buildings and no one was ever in them, they'd be very, very easy to manage. We could always keep it the same temperature, we could always keep it the same light level, we could always keep everything perfect. But because you introduce people, you start to introduce some real challenges to this environment. People prop open doors, they leave windows open, they get too hot, they get too cold, they plug in a space heater, they have all these various pieces that go into this mix. And then you start to talk about just the feelings that are created in these buildings. So for example, if a sensor doesn't operate correctly and the lights go out, people don't feel good about that space. Or if you walk into a hallway and it's dark and the sensor doesn't pick you up or doesn't do its job, you don't feel as safe, or you don't feel quite as comfortable in that space. So where I think sort of the industry is headed between this human connection part and the data part is we will start to blend the perfect building where there's no people in it, and we can operate it very smoothly and nice and clean all the time. We will start to blend that with the people element, and we'll be able to take all these data points and start to use the artificial intelligence and the IoT to sort of blend these two environments together and really adapt to the people that are in that environment much better than we do today. I think today, it gets cold, we turn on the heat. It gets hot, we turn on the air conditioner. And in the future, we can say, okay, this person who just came in with their badge goes to office number 73, so let's heat office number 73 before they even get there. And there's just a huge amount of things that can be done in that environment when you start to get into the IoT and these various things. So as we go forward, I see a lot of data points that are going to start to come in there, and that's where the Project Haystack and others in the BACnet community and different things really need to start to pull the data in such a way that it can be evaluated and studied, and we can use things like IBM's Watson computer to start to do the artificial intelligence evaluation of this and sort of predict a lot of the ways that these different buildings are going to operate. I mean, we have a number of people in here right now, and the CO2 level would be very easy to manage, and we could pull fresh air into this room only if we had it managed correctly. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that human connection and the data kind of blend together as we go. So I'll hand it over to Martin.
Good.
If we want to do that.
Yep, great. Thank you, Troy.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Martin Villeneuve. I'm the president of Distech Controls. I'm also the SVP of distributed building technology of Acuity Brands. So I've been in the industry for 22 years, 20 of which I've spent my time inside of the Distech Controls organization, running multiple departments, engineering, product management, overall of the business in Europe, all the way through president. So I have somehow a little bit of experience into the building automation industry. The subject of of our presentation, it's really interesting. It's human connection. So how does the human connection has changed and will change into the future? What's interesting is that so far, any building management system that was put on the market still has the same human interaction between us, the occupant, and the system. It's basically, and for those who are in this field of industry, we all look at the sensor when we came in the room. The old beige sensor that we always wonder, is it pneumatic? Is it electronics? Have they got into the conversion yet? When was it installed? Is it 20 years ago? And even if we would do a system, I would say 2 years ago, it would still be a sensor in the room, and our interaction would be almost only with that. And is it really what we want today in 2019 now? 2019? No, of course. What do we want? We want a Bluetooth interface. We want an interface with our smartphone, because the smartphone, it's everything we carry. We don't take notes anymore. We take notes on our iPhone. You have paper. Sorry, guys.
Love it, guys.
Hey, we have a guy in the back having a phone. So yes, we are connected to our phones, to our smartphones. So that is one of the big revolution of the industry. Regardless of what we did as a collective, as a community of manufacturer in the last 20 years, going from LAN, BACnet, MSTP, IP, nothing has changed from the human interaction. So I think what really going to change from a human interaction is that it's the connectivity to the smartphone. I don't want to predict the future. Is it going to be voice recognition? Is it going to be gesture control? There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of research. We as a company have made research and patent on this. But we think this industry has to undertake this general change of being connected to the smartphone. And this is opening up a whole lot of new possibility from a technology perspective. Because when you think about it, we were always going to change the set point. You arrive in your hotel room, you look at this thing, and then you say, okay, when I press the button, the display is it the temperature that is in the room, or is it the set point? We always ask this question. But why do we need to change the temperature? If our phone, which is always with us, know what is the preference that we have. So then when we enter in the room with this connectivity that is coming not from the BMS world, which is coming from other world, knows it. So then we don't have to adjust to it. Plus, this is us with the system, but the system with us, it knows where we are. It knows what our habits. So then in a room like this, it knows that today, it would know that today we are more than 250 participants in this room. No?
If that's the way you count. No, kidding.
So then we can adjust the fresh air coming in the room. We can adjust other parameters in some other type of environment. We can know where, not only where we are as human, but where the objects are. Imagine yourself in an hospital environment. Probably the nurses are always looking for where is the equipment. These equipment are expensive. Are they used? Are they stored at a proper place? If you are in another application, if you are in an airport, there's always a problem of the wheelchair. So where are the wheelchair? Can we attach something which is, today it's Bluetooth, it's a beacon on the wheelchair? How do you get this information on where are the things? What is the building system which is the incumbent into the building? It's the building management system. So this is very good for our industry because it's going to be refresh of new technology, new IDs, new application. There's also the lights. The lights are proeminent in a room. So these technology would be the natural fit in order to come and capture more information in order to enhance the occupant experience and the human interaction with the room. So this is on the human interaction perspective. what is changing and what is going to continue to change a lot in the next year. So I feel that we are living one of the only transformation that ever happened in the last, well, a sensor in the room was there for what, 35 years? Probably more than that. From a technology perspective, we've always a little bit had some discussion, or I don't want to say fight, but hey, who's going to be next? Is it going to be LawnWorks, BACnet, IP? Now we can affirm in 2019 that IP is going to make its way through all the building management system. It made its way into the phone industry, and a lot of it's made its way into the camera industry. So building management system was only a question of time. Then the protocol that goes into this media of communication, it's one of the first time that we're seeing us being connected with other types of products, such as Alexa product, new thermostat that are coming into the market. They're not coming into the market with a protocol that was only used into the BMS industry. They're coming with protocols that are more IT related. The one used by the GAFA of this world, so the REST API and QTT. And those protocol enables a lot of other possibility that we haven't seen into the industry that will at the end enhance again the occupant experience and change the human interaction. We are almost at the point where the smartphone was built and only a couple apps were existing on the smartphone. And now nobody will live without the Uber app. But nobody knew that Uber would exist when the first iPhone came in 2010. So this is only 8-9 years ago. So now we are providing us as a collective building automation manufacturer, we are providing a means to have the new technology and the new apps and the new way of using the system to exist and to being developed. Now we're waiting for the killer app that's going to make this the de facto standard into a building. I personally think that the indoor positioning, asset tracking, the people counting is going to be one of the top applications that will be used on our collective systems, but there will be a lot of others as well.
The theme of all the automated building sessions is this building emotion, and we're using that both as a noun and a verb. And we're now having to interface with that. And we get into the question is temperature what we're really trying to control? Because if we kind of get into the psychic of people, we find that isn't true. It depends on whether we've been jogging so there's a whole bunch of variables there. We're also seeing the phone is the center of most things. But when I was over in Helsinki at the Nordic Building Convention, they pointed out a concept which they call deviceless. And it's the idea that we actually have, let's call them building bots. And building bots take a look at what we're doing. They're probably not much different than a VAV controller. They just have a better connection to the cloud. And what they're doing is they're basically either with machine vision or voice, we're interacting with them, more in a humanistic kind of approach. A simple example would be we come to a door, it recognizes our eye, and it opens the door and says good morning to us and allows us through. And the next person comes up, it announces to them that they're not familiar with who they are and could they call this phone number if they wish to have access. So we're starting to see machines having an interaction, a personality, and basically creating something that I've tagged as building emotion. And so we're starting to see that as a social fabric that we can kind of pull over these buildings. And I think the architectural world has to basically figure out where that's going to fit. We have another identity, which is master systems integrators who have grown up. They started out by being a vendor for one manufacturer, And then they ran into a project where they had 2 manufacturers, and then they did 3 and 4. And after they did that, they became master systems integrators. And now they're starting to run into this humanistic side, and we're now upgrading to super master systems integrators, which is the next session. Scott Cochran is back there, and he's going to lead that session. So that's another complexity, is there's a function, what I call a functional creep, is we're starting out of our world into this IT world, and we're starting to have these devices, and I think Martin talked about this too, is the vision, the whole idea of integrating vision into our products. Again, it comes from the phone. Every phone has 2 or 3 cameras in it. The actual camera is becoming cheaper than any other sensor we can build, and it's a static thing that doesn't require a lot of maintenance. And as we start, somebody else is in the tunable glass business out here. We've been chatting with them. So we have all these new things that we need to connect, and we have we have some strange bedfellows that we're going to work with to connect this stuff. And I think that's an interesting area as well. So I would actually like to just, I don't know if we want to go back in the same order, or maybe I'd like to do it in reverse order. Because Martin went the widest on his presentation. So I'd like to hear Martin's feelings about where he sees that going and how he sees us, like what is going to be Amazon services? What is he thinking of adding Echo to his product or not? Is he thinking of vision? A fun thing I find with vision is we take a camera and we convert to a picture and put it on a screen, and we look at it and we say, that's nice. But if 2 computers are talking, there's no need for 2 computers to convert it to a picture. They're just looking for a digital print of some bunch of bit bytes that tell them that this is this and that is that. And so therefore, we have this situation that AI, it looks at, what are these humans talking about? Why are they showing each other pictures when we could actually be communicating at a machine language? So we've got that whole evolution that we have to get our heads around as well. And the fact that devices are going to self-learn. And we're starting to see that coming down to these open hardware, open software systems. We're seeing these products, what do you guys call them, hats? And hats coming on these small form computers, and some of them actually have artificial intelligence on it. They have self-learning algorithms. So we're kind of moving into that in the near future, I think, where we start in a simple basis. And the reason we can do that is it's going to only have to learn what I have to do with that door or what I have to do with that VAV box. Do you want to speak around any of those topics? I've given you enough room there.
Yeah,
So.
I can speak basically about anything.
Yeah, that's it.
So this microphone is working.
Yeah, it's good.
So basically the future of...
Well, maybe the big thing for me is the interaction. How are we going to interact with these software giants?
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's probably a one that's really close that I think you're probably dealing with, because some of the things you said, I don't see that being done by Distech or Acuity. So therefore, how much do you see coming out of, it's like Amazon
Of the
services?
giants.
Yeah, the giants.
Yeah, so what I can say about that is that the percentage of time we're spending inside of the building, so what do you think is the percentage of time we spend inside of the building?
Percentage?
In percentage?
88.
90%. It's 90% of the time we spend in the building, 6% in our car, and 4% outdoor. So, and yet, most of the functionality of ease of life are happening with, again, I don't want to say it too much, but our smartphone outside, because we have the GPS and we have the location services, etc. As soon as you're indoor, poof, everything stops. You're blind. It's just to be in that show, to go from your trade show booth to here, you don't know how long it's going to take. You don't know exactly where it is going to be. So building are becoming a place where you live 90% of the time, but it's tougher to be in a building than to be outside from all the functionality you can have. So I believe that this is going to need to change. I think, again, the Google, the Facebook of this world are working very hard on how to enhance the user experience inside of the building for their employee and for the entire community. This is what my company is working for a lot, because today, from a technology perspective, there's nothing else than having hardware inside of the building to communicate with, to have a semi-interaction with the smartphone. So we want to decouple the brain from only the building management system and the lighting system in order to use the edge device, and edge device are going to be in all the phones of everyone, trying to be what we can say mesh between your phone and the building management system to go and capture closer information. Just as an example, you want to know if there's still water into the water distributor down there. The Bluetooth technology from the closest, the beacon, which is the closest, is too far. Why not? You're using anyway the app of the building, because you are in a building and you want to know where to go from a store to another, from a restaurant to another. Why not having this app being able to transmit information when you're close to a beacon back to the main system of the building, which is connected with the app of the building, and then having a multi-layer communication system into the building in order to bridge what we're missing from the outdoor and the indoor. So this is one of the things. There would be many other things, but I want to leave time to the others to speak as well.
Sure. Do you see that being supplied by Google and Amazon, or do you see that being developed by Distech and Acuity?
I don't think they have the penetration inside of the building. They don't have hardware in the building. They don't have connection to the building end user, to the maintenance. So before they found a system that doesn't involve anything hardware inside of a building, they need us.
And you're also in a very unique position in the fact that you are a lighting company as well as a control company, or a lighting company that has bought a control company. Do you want to comment on that? Because that's pretty profound in the fact that you have not only have one location in every room, you have several locations in every room, plus you have a power supply by default. And so you have, combining the lighting distribution and controls is an interesting, what should we call it, trend, I guess, in the control industry. Can you just want to comment a little bit about that?
The density is making a difference, a humongous difference, and also the trust. I would say trust, and you're going to say, what's about the trust? Usually the trusted advisor into a building is the people that are doing the maintenance and did the controls from a building management perspective. Not necessarily the lighting controls guys, which is usually an electrician, that usually they go there in and out, and they don't have I would say a permanent weekly, monthly relationship with the building owner and the facility manager. So being in the Distech community, and I don't want it to be a sales pitch, but the Distech community is an SI community. It's they have the link with the building, and now Acuity is bringing us the density and the market size in order to really change something. Mm-hmm. So that is exactly what we are making. We're using the brain of our Eclipse IP IoT controller inside of all lighting installation of Acuity. So the Distech system Eclipse have been now replacing all the brain from a lighting controls perspective. And we can say that Acuity has, depending on the vertical market, between 30 to 50% market share into the building industry in North America. So every of those buildings, slowly but surely, are going to have Distech controls installed. So that's going to make us to be able to finally change the market from the lighting and BMS integration, which was long time due, and then being an access on how we will transform those buildings into strategic asset through IoT.
Great, that's a great response, and I think that's certainly a cannon shot across all our bows of just, density is an interesting word, because we have not really talked about density of connectivity. Troy, do you want to take the wireless
Sure.
road?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Martin is talking about is, the density of the lights and having that all in these different buildings. When we're talking about a new building, if you choose to wire it, that's that's a certain amount of effort, a certain amount of material handling, a certain amount of labor, planning, all of that. But where the bulk of the current business is for us anyway, and what we're seeing in our partnership with Distech as well, is a lot of the retrofit applications. So if we wanted to retrofit this particular room, for example, it would be quite challenging to do with wires. However, if we wanted to drop in wireless, we could drop in different controllers across all these various fixtures, which would then add the asset tracking, indoor positioning, and other data that's there. The lights are a really interesting thing for us because you do have that power supply there as you need it, and you can use that power supply to sort of collect and absorb a lot of different data points and also create a lot of different data points. So there's a real opportunity there to start to see some of those things and use the lighting, and in a sense you bring those two things together like Acuity did with their acquisition of Distech, or their arrangement with Distech, and you basically say, now we've got a single sensor in the room that can tell us whether it's occupied or unoccupied, and you don't have a competing system where the HVAC is maybe showing occupied, the lighting's showing unoccupied, whatever. It's all sort of wrapped into one big thing, and you can also tell exactly how many people are in here. One of the interesting things that we've seen recently is the Wi-Fi access points are starting to drive into this business as well, because right now you could have the next Wi-Fi company come in and replace this Wi-Fi and give everybody a new password, and life is good. So the Wi-Fi companies are now starting to connect themselves to the building so that they can't be easily replaced, right? If they become part of the building integration, they can't just simply say, oh, well, I just want to order the new one and get a different company in here, right? So because they become part of that. And then through their partnerships with Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft, all these different ones, all of that data goes back into the cloud. But I think one of the things with the cloud that's interesting for me is $5 billion in cloud computing, I think it was, you mentioned, is not just data storage, right? The cloud is much more than data storage. It's huge amounts of effort into security and data protection and encryption and all these different things that become important for, even with companies such as Distech being part of Acuity and a multi-billion-dollar company, you still have security issues that can be best managed by those experts at Amazon or IBM or Google or those different places, and sort of distribute that responsibility across the various different companies. So I think the cloud part for me is going to be sort of a weird combination between Amazon saying, what do you need, right? And you say, oh, well, I need it to evaluate all these different data points. Okay, well, what do you want the outcome to be? Here's what I want the outcome to be. And then they calculate that and provide that back to the manufacturers or to the different people in that part of the industry. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think the cloud sometimes gets confused between data storage and actual data manipulation and analytics. And I think where it's going for me, where I see it going, is the analytics side. I mean, even security cameras, I can log into my house and it now has artificial intelligence where it can track the difference between a dog running around or a kid running around or a person running around. It can track aggressive behavior. So if somebody kicks in a door, it views that different than just opening a door. So all of that is done in the cloud. The analytics are done in the cloud. Has nothing to do with the camera. The cameras and the actual edge devices or the end devices on our side especially are just getting simpler and simpler. We're just providing that piece that goes into the analytics. So all of this cloud discussion, I think, really comes down to the analytics of it and how that plays into the whole finished look and feel of the whole thing.
But just to roll that all up, what I'm hearing is that one of the most important services that we are going to supply as a connection industry is to try and determine what of these location services, and basically it goes beyond, as you say, the cloud goes way beyond location services. It goes into providing all kinds of connection services, which we're in the connection community business, but we started in the physical connection community, and now we moved into IT, then pushing that around IT. You started pushing it around wireless, and I think we're now coming to a conclusion that
somewhere, there's a magical line here, and we're going to start tapping into Amazon services, Google services, and our expertise, the value of our engineers is going to be the correct, like that. Why I would call you is I would call you to tell me, you should probably use this service because it's just everywhere free. But we can do a better job of this because we can connect to there.
Right.
And then you have the interesting thing that you're actually, you're basically a go-between hardwired and hardwired and some of these
Right.
web services and stuff. So it's an interesting. Do you want to comment on that, George, or do you want to? You don't have to, but if you want to.
I think you guys are getting way out of line.
Well, that's good.
So that's two on this side, all gray hair.
Yeah.
You know, this,
Really is well, Mark.
we started this by saying the young people think anything is possible, and these guys are believing it. So, the question is, do we really need all this stuff? And I contend we don't. I hate going in a building and just registering my name, let alone saying, where's your cell phone? And did you bring your cell phone today because the air conditioning won't come on without it? I mean, this is very strange to me. The other thing about this is you're going to get pushed back on a privacy basis.
Thank you.
You're going to know more. You're going to know more about the individual now than you do now. The government's pushing back on Facebook. There's going to be issue. And the Europeans, you're the guys who came up to the GDPR,
That was me.
Okay.
It's all me.
It's
Yeah.
all your fault, right? We don't even understand it. We don't know we're doing the right thing. So I would say this is technology looking for applications, not the other way around. So I'm not a proponent of it.
Can I comment on that really quick before you jump in? Okay.
It's coming down your
No, go ahead.
I gotta go.
All right, go ahead, Mark.
So
Give me the mic.
you started it. So
This is what they call communication.
this is good. This is good. So again, technology is great. We love it. That's how we all earn our business. But to George's point, I want to echo, I think all of this stuff, there's three areas that none of us in the industry, whether it's Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, it doesn't matter, us here in this room, on the floor, three issues. One is privacy, absolutely positively. That is the next big debate that is currently happening right now. We've got to be able to figure that out for ourselves for any of this stuff to be successful. Two is who owns the data? I walk into a building and it's tracking me that Mark came in at 8:35 today. I'm supposed to be here at 8 o'clock, whatever. I go in for my annual review and I go, oh, well, you know what? You were late 20 times out of this last period. Whatever. Whose business is that other, so that's, maybe that's a bad example, but you get my drift. And the third is, what if this is cybersecurity? Is the security of this data? I walk into a hotel room. Let's use Martin's example. I'm not picking on you, Martin. I walk in. I got the AC and everything else. What if somebody hacks that into? They're getting data. They're getting information that is none of their businesses. Or take an example where, and I'm having this is a personal thing. So where I live in Richmond, Virginia, I was working out of my home office, and I see this truck pull up to my front yard. Guy gets out with a camera, starts taking a picture of my house. I go, run out. Excuse me, what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm with the county. I said, okay, can I see some ID? He shows me an ID. And I said, what are you taking the picture of my home for? He says, well, your home was randomly picked to do tax assessments for the rest of your neighborhood and so forth in the county that I live in. I said, okay, so once you have that, what are you going to do with this? Oh, we're going to put your house up on the internet and we're going to show you. I said, no, the hell, you're not putting my house on the internet. So, and I had to hire a lawyer to prevent that from happening. So the point is, that's my information. Where are we going to get to a point where I go in for a new job, you must sign all information contained within this building, you forfeit or whatever the case is. So that we have to address that. That is not being addressed. And I think it's even going further, and then I'll shut up. In California, they just passed a rule beginning, I think it's 2020, next year. Any internet-enabled device has to have security built in it. And if it doesn't, they're coming after you, plain and simple. That's it. So we've got a lot of business things and things that we've got to figure out for all this to work. And that's where this humanistic side, that's how I view the humanistic side is, information about me and all of us here. So I'll shut up.
So I would like to respond to that because it's
Thank
very
you.
interesting. It's the young against the old. Is it the...
I would say I'm in between. Between.
So first, for example, in our technology, the device name and who you are is not known. It's just a Bluetooth thing which is running around. But I understand you can have your doubt, and we can have a debate on that. I think who wants this? It's the building owner. It's the one that, and to be honest, I was in a lot of discussion with, hey, I'm the building owner of the building A. My competitor are the building owner of the building B and C, which are just around me, and I need to provide more value for the price of the square feet that I rent. So Martin, Distech, whatever BMS, help me to provide more value than only the bare square feet, the types of window, the color of the walls, what can help me to bring value? So that is for the building owner himself. And then for the tenant which manage a business, they need to be in this world of lowest rate of unemployment. You need as a business to be attractive. So what are you giving to your employees to have the willingness to work in your company? So
again, I'm not disagreeing. I absolutely support the technology, but we've got to have these other pieces in place to be able not to get caught with something happening that,
this
potential could
completely
happen.
agree. Completely agree.
Google Drive by.
Yeah, I was going to say, I could probably pull up a picture
Oh,
of
you
your house
can.
on
We got a
Google
picture.
Street
You
View.
can.
We have a picture of your house.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
And
the
you don't
same
want
thing.
to know what we saw.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
No, I think you're right. The privacy protection is a really interesting thing, but every time you download one of these apps, Uber, Lyft, any other app, you check a box that says, yes, I read the terms and conditions that you just emailed me. That's 27 pages. I don't think I've ever even looked at one. The only thing I know is it says end user license agreement at the top. That's as far as I've gotten. Then you just scroll through as much as you have to do till the box becomes live and you click accept, right? So I have no idea what I've agreed to over the last 5-10 years, but I know that I've been pretty proud of the HVAC industry. So we work in the HVAC industry, we work in the lighting industry, and we also work in the consumer industry. So last week I was at Consumer Electronics Show. It was literally 180,000 people in Las Vegas, the biggest trade show in the country. Wow. You could walk out of any convention center and get right into a taxi, drive away, right? And here at
Taxi
AHR,
or Uber or both?
taxi.
Oh, taxi.
Because the Ubers were backed up like crazy, right? Nobody was taking taxis. This is the Consumer Electronics Show. Everybody had Uber and Lyft, right?
Yeah.
So you would pick up an Uber and a Lyft, but now you can walk right up and you can get in taxis. And so it was really interesting because 3 years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, we were at Chicago AHR show. Taxi line was 2 hours. We would get an Uber in 3 minutes, right? So, but there was 2 hours worth of people waiting in that line. So then the next year, AHR was much shorter taxi line, a lot more people taking Uber and Lyft. This year, I've noticed tons and tons of people walking to the gas station across the street picking up their Lyft, right? And not nearly as many
And
taxis.
you go nowhere because the traffic sucks.
Well, right, yeah. Then you just sit in traffic, but you're going to do that in either case. But in both cases, Uber and Lyft know exactly where you're going, what you're doing. They have a map of where you've been, what time you went there, all of that, right?
Yes.
And they have all of that data, and they own that data. So it's pretty interesting to see how that all works out. But I guess my point is that the HVAC industry is quickly becoming, they're kind of being forced to transition into this technology and adopt all this technology and different things. And we've seen it already happening in the lighting industry. They sort of let it out a little bit. They're still changing a lot too. They have a complicated channel that they have to deal with. But it's interesting to see the HVAC industry finally going, oh, okay, fine, we'll do it. But now they're trying to find where the value is and how there's still revenue to be produced in these different parts of the building connection and the human side of it, right? And how that turns into value. So pretty interesting.
I think it's amazing, and actually your talk about Uber and stuff. It's there's the other side of it as well. As I pay my Uber account with PayPal, and so what happens is every time I take an Uber, cab the Jane gets at our place, because we obviously share the same emails. So she gets a PayPal charge kind of thing, and that happens instantaneously too. So I charge the card, and within 2 minutes, PayPal pays it and sends us a receipt. So there's a whole track. So I think I think the whole security, I think you probably should have started 10 years ago if you're really worried about that, because you've been exposed and exploited. But again, I look to those folks and basically the administration of the same to solve that problem. I don't think that's our problem. I think our problem as a connection community is to try and determine where best we enter into that world. And I think we kind of push that line back and forth, and we talk about strange bedfellows, and we've got to figure that out. And again, I think it probably will depend on the project. And one point you brought up, which was really good, was the whether we're dealing new construction or retrofit. Although, ironically enough, new construction has no appetite to get their mind around all of this. In a discussion we were having somewhere yesterday, they talked about bringing in guerrilla warfare Wi-Fi to basically set up all their boxes and stuff. And then when the actual internet, they actually ran 2 networks. They basically set it up on a Wi-Fi network and then got everything set up. And then when they plugged in the Ethernet, then they took the Wi-Fi away. Or alternately, the other approach was some of the folks were actually putting in their own Wi-Fi systems. What's sort of some of the thinking there? Is that something the connection community is going to get involved in? Or? Well, you think so? No?
I mean, that's where my point came in about the Ciscos and the Arubas of the world, right? Is they want to participate in this because it makes them relevant, right? It makes them sticky a little bit. They stick into the building a lot better when they've got a connection to the actual building integration or building automation system. They're much harder to replace, and they add value to their systems quite a bit. So they're offering that connection to a lot of the community at no real charge, but more just so that they can remain and retain their relevance in the building and really not be replaced as easily. So
that's what we need to learn, how to become sticky. That's an interesting one. Okay, do we have any questions, or anybody who would like to add some comment? Could you come up to the mic, please? We'd appreciate that. Right here in the middle, the aisle there, because it's we can, yeah.
So
great.
I wanted to address.
Identify yourself.
My name is Monica Sanchez, and I work in analyst relations for Acuity Brands.
Oh.
So I actually wanted to discuss just a question about security, and I think that is a key point that's going to come up. And it's not just within the devices, but within the end-to-end system, as how these devices are integrated within the connected system, within a connected building system. And as those connection points, as they go from the device, let's say to the cloud, it's going to be, I think that's a bigger issue that we're actually looking into as a company. But I think you're spot on with that in terms of that.
The industry, I think we identified that cyber is an issue we ignored for many, many years. When we first came out with all the various technologies we have here, the protocols, BACnet, whatever, we never had cybersecurity on our minds. We never talked about that. Who would ever thought utilizing some type of device or a system that controls HVAC or lighting could be a vector to get in and do something, get something, or whatever it is. But we are starting to address it now. And I think as manufacturers, as OEMs, as system integrators, as distributors, I see Scott back there, as building owners, if we have any, it is everyone's shared responsibility to address cyber in some way, shape, or form. And I guess I look at this is that I think many of the manufacturers are starting to address it. Mm-hmm. I think many of the system integrators are. And I think building owners are now starting to say, all right, if you're going to engage me and you're going to put this great stuff in here, what are we going to do about cybersecurity? And then, but I don't see where we are really taking a collective group effort for that. We're each doing our own things, as I see it, which I think takes us longer to get there. So anyway.
So what we are actually doing is we're developing a framework for a connected building and how those systems would play together from HVAC all the way to the lighting or to your IoT device. So what does that framework look like? Because we have it for the devices, but it's not yet complete in terms of the framework that would guide those principles. That's all I have.
Great, no, great comments, thanks. You want to come up? Yeah, you got to come up.
It's following up on the same thing. Is that I'm.
I know who you are, but you got to tell us who you are.
So yes, I'm Therese Sullivan from Tritium right now, and I know we're partners to LinkSpring and DizTech, and we have our history with the cybersecurity issue, and certainly it's a partnership, just as Mark described. And I think it's going to take all of us, collectively as an industry, to move forward at any of these things. Putting more in the building that maybe, as George points out, we don't quite need yet. But until we step up to, and cybersecurity is probably the largest pain point, but the pain point of acting like software companies, understanding what a software maintenance agreement is. Having, Tritium probably, because we have so many OEM partners, and Niagara has been out so long, we have a huge footprint. And once you have a huge footprint, you have a bigger target base. And so it's a natural place for us to take a leadership position on this. This issue has to be addressed as an industry, and we have to be as cybersecure as our IT customers. We're being put on IT networks. And it's nothing one company can do, but certainly getting that message to building owners that when we put out new versions and patches to vulnerabilities, they have to be put on. We have to stay up to date, and it's not a transactional industry. You buy an air handler and it sits there for 10 years with a same control pack on it. It's something just like your phone has to be updated every 6 months and maybe more in an interruptive way if there's a specific vulnerability that needs to be patched. And I think that's what the industry hasn't communicated well and hasn't stepped up collectively to.
Great. I see Jim Lee, and I was going to call him up because then there's another one here where we can, basically our connection communities such as BACnet can enter into this, and I think you've been doing a lot of work in that area. Can you maybe expound on that, and plus ever what it is you wanted to talk about?
No, that's great, Ken. Thanks. Jim Lee with Symmetrics. I just wanted to point out that, in fact, we don't have a lot of cybersecurity technology that we're shipping, but we have been working on it for 20 years. So actually, in the earliest version of BACnet, there was some security technology. It was deemed to be not relevant because TCP/IP wasn't even the chosen standard by the time that was done. Starting in around 2002, 2003, work began on something called BACnet Addendum G, where the building automation community developed security standards internally for BACnet. Many of us at that time felt that those standards would never be adopted because even though the best and brightest minds in our industry came up with some great security, it was not IT security. So at that time, we partnered with Cisco starting in 2009 to launch a new standard under the auspices of the ASHRAE committee under a subcommittee called BACnet IT that Jim Butler is chairman of. That process has taken 10 years, and now we are just taking down the new BACnet security standard off of the jacks. BACnet SC will hopefully be released in 2019. And it is a collective work of the industry to create some real security standards using traditional IT security, so TLS, et cetera. So,
Great. No, that's good.